Thank you very much. Thank you very much. It's great to be here with you today. I want to thank Pastor Hagee for those very kind words. It's been my privilege to speak before Kufi on many occasions, and none is as great today to see this crowd here in Washington. I wanted to speak to you about the relationship between the United States and Israel in the context of how President Trump has completely changed the foreign policy paradigm for the United States of America in just 2 short years. Since the president took office, he has charted a bold new course in every aspect of foreign affairs. Around the world, naive beliefs have now given way to clear-eyed common sense. We are no longer surrendering American liberty in the name of global governance. We are no longer selling out our friends to appease our adversaries. And we are no longer sacrificing the interest of the American people to pursue idealistic fantasies in Havana, Tehran, or anywhere else. Instead, we are proudly defending American strength and American sovereignty. As a result, the world is changing for the better, and the American people are safer. We can see the results of renewed American leadership in every corner of the globe, and particularly in the Middle East, that difficult neighborhood Israel calls home. Over the years, presidents and policymakers have utilized many different tools of foreign policy. They've adopted varying philosophies, tactics, and so-called doctrines. Yet, unfortunately, these strategies have too often failed to yield results. This administration, on the other hand, is guided by one simple principle. In every decision we make, we put the interests of the American people first. Since January 2017, we have applied this principle across all major issue areas. For example, we have taken direct action to protect American sovereignty and American interests in international forums of all kinds. Last June, we announced our withdrawal from the hypocritical UN Human Rights Council, which shielded the world's worst human rights violators while devoting most of its time to condemning Israel, a thriving democracy. We are also reevaluating UN peacekeeping missions, including those involving Israel, to ensure support for effective, accountable, and efficient operations. We will not allow bureaucratic inertia to keep the United States in international organizations or agreements that undermine U.S. interests and values. For these reasons, in September of last year, I announced that the United States would not fund, support, or cooperate with the International Criminal Court, or ICC. The ICC, which asserts near universal jurisdiction over the citizens of every country without their consent. As I said then, the ICC is flawed to its core, and we will let it die on its own. The court is a favorite child of global governance advocates, and it has failed repeatedly in its purported aim to deter and punish egregious human rights violations. Instead, the ICC has become a forum for politicized attacks on the foreign policies of liberal democracies such as the United States and Israel. In fact, in November 2017, the ICC prosecutor requested to investigate alleged war crimes supposedly committed by American service members and intelligence professionals during the war in Afghanistan. And at the behest of the so-called State of Palestine, the ICC has threatened to investigate Israeli housing projects, in addition to targeting Israeli counterterrorism efforts in the West Bank and Gaza. We cannot and will not allow the ICC bureaucrats in The Hague to dictate our foreign policy or that of our most trusted allies, first and foremost Israel. Accordingly, in addition to withdrawing all support for the ICC, last month we also announced a policy to restrict U.S. visas for anyone responsible for an ICC investigation of American personnel. We welcome the unanimous April 12 decision by the ICC to finally back down from the Afghanistan investigation. However, as the President noted in his statement that day, we reiterate that any attempt to target American, Israeli, or allied personnel will be met with a swift and vigorous response. In September, I also announced that the United States was closing the Palestine Liberation Organization in Washington, D.C. We have also ended funding for the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine, or UNRWA. And we have cut support for the Palestinian Authority. We will not allow the PLO office in Washington to reopen until the Palestinians start direct and substantive negotiations with the Israelis. We will not support UNRWA until it uses American aid to assist people in emergency situations and stops funding those promoting hatred toward the United States of America and its citizens. And we will not restore funding to the Palestinian Authority until it stops its vile practice of paying terrorists and their families for murdering innocent American and Israeli men, women, and children. As the President has said, the United States supports Israel's absolute right to self-defense. And any future peace agreement must account for Israel's need to protect its people from Syria, Iran, and other regional threats. Peace in the Middle East need not come at the expense of American moral courage or of Israeli security. We will not allow political correctness to stand in the way of doing what is right and just. For this reason, President Trump also recognized Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, something that seems to have escaped former presidents. And now the United States Embassy, under the able leadership of Ambassador David Friedman, thrives in the historic capital of the Jewish people. In addition, in March, President Trump signed a second presidential proclamation recognizing Israel's sovereignty over the Golan Heights. Naysayers had told generations of presidents that these actions would actually isolate Israel and potentially incite violence against both Israel and the United States. But President Trump saw things differently, and we have all seen the results. A year after our new embassy opened in Jerusalem, Israel has unprecedented relations with our other partners across the Middle East. Prime Minister Netanyahu made his first official visit to the capital of Oman with little or no response from the Arab street. Israeli athletes, supported openly by their families, won 22 medals at the Special Olympics in Dubai in March. And just last week, the foreign minister of Bahrain, Sheikh Khalid bin Ahmed Al Khalifa, told an Israeli journalist, and I quote now, "Israel is a country in the Middle East. The Jewish people have a place among us." All of this is the result of full, unconditional, and unapologetic support for Israel. In May of last year, we achieved yet another major success in the Middle East. The President announced our withdrawal from the disastrous Iran nuclear deal. The worst diplomatic debacle in American history. And I am here to tell you today, President Trump's maximum pressure campaign against Iran is working. A little over a year ago, our critics predicted we couldn't do it. Our unilateral sanctions, they said, would not be effective. Since then, the United States has levied the toughest ever sanctions on the Iranian regime, and Iran's economy is, to quote the Financial Times, collapsing under their weight. The Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps, or IRGC, is starting to have to cut salaries and support for proxies across the region, leaving them to lament the golden days are gone and will never return. And we are just getting started. In November, we finished reimposing the crippling sanctions that had originally brought Tehran to the negotiating table. But we did not stop there, as the President's goal is to get a new deal that would be negotiated in the best interest of the United States. We have also designated the IRGC as a foreign terrorist organization. This is the first time an element of a foreign government has been designated as a foreign terrorist organization. It will make it harder for anyone affiliated with the IRGC to enter our great country. Also makes it a crime for individuals, companies, or institutions to do business with this vile terrorist group. On the anniversary of President Trump's withdrawal from the Iran nuclear deal, all of the waivers that had been granted on Iranian oil sales have gone to zero. This action is choking off Iran's single greatest source of funding. Like the IRGC terrorist designation, this is an unprecedented step aimed at putting maximum pressure on Tehran to change its threatening behavior. We welcome the action by the British Royal Marines on the 4th of July, no less, to enforce EU sanctions on Syria by seizing a supertanker with millions of barrels of Iranian oil off Gibraltar. That is a real 4th of July present. Actions such as this to disrupt sanctions evasion are critical to denying both the Syrian and Iranian regimes the financial resources they desperately need. We must redouble our cooperation with our allies and partners to enforce our sanctions and enforce freedom of navigation. We are cracking down on other sectors of the Iranian economy, such as metals and petrochemicals, that Tehran was banking on to diversify their revenue streams. The anticipated flood of foreign investment into Iran has utterly failed to materialize. as private companies make the obvious calculation that Iran is a bad bet. German exports German exports to Iran, for example, are down 50% over last year, according to the Association of German Chambers of Commerce and Industry. And as I said earlier this year in Miami, under this administration, no regime that chants death to America or death to Israel will get a deal from this administration. We will continue to increase the pressure on the Iranian regime until it abandons its nuclear weapons program and ends its violent activities across the Middle East, including conducting and supporting terrorism around the world. Tehran's continued pursuit of a nuclear program, including recent increases in uranium stockpiles and enrichment levels, is in direct violation of its commitments under the nuclear deal. It's certainly a grave threat to international peace and security that the deal was supposed to preserve. Given Iran's documented history of pursuing a nuclear weapon, these actions underscore the seriousness of Iran's ongoing nuclear ambitions. President Trump has been clear. He will not allow Iran any path to nuclear weapons. As we pressure the Iranian regime, we also continue to stand with the long-suffering Iranian people, who, as President Trump has said, are the rightful heirs to a rich culture and an ancient land. In every region of the world, the United States seeks partners who are strong, sovereign, and independent. We want nations to take ownership over their own destinies and assume responsibility for peace and security in their own neighborhoods. Importantly, as we encourage our allies and partners to embrace their independence, defend their sovereignty, and invest in their security, we are doing the same here at home. The United States wants the same success for Israel, and we are seeing Israel, fully supported by America, take a new role on the international stage. I witnessed this just 2 weeks ago when I participated in an historic trilateral meeting between the United States and Russia, hosted by Israel in Jerusalem. In discussions with my counterparts, Mayor Ben Shabbat and Nikolai Patrushev, despite our many differences with our Russian friends, one point of agreement stood out, that Israel's security is central to the stability of the Middle East. A strong, independent Israel will only be an ever more valuable partner to the United States. This is what it means to put American interest first. And this is the approach that is finally getting results for the American people, as it will get results for the Israeli people. Finally, a word about an extraordinary event that took place in Jerusalem last Sunday, when Ambassador Friedman and Mrs. Sarah Netanyahu participated in the inauguration of the Pilgrimage Road in the city of David, a remarkable archaeological discovery that provides fresh, scientific, historical proof of the connection between the Jewish people and Jerusalem. While I had to be with President Trump at the G20 in Osaka while this ceremony was taking place, I was proud to have the White House represented by Jason Greenblatt, from whom you've just heard. And I visited the city of David many times, most recently for a personal tour and very special dinner with Mayor Ben Shabbat, my Israeli counterpart. This connection between the past and the present, leading into the future, represented by the Pilgrimage Road, is what President Trump instinctively recognized when he promised to move the embassy to Jerusalem on the campaign trail and what motivated him to make good on his promise. I understand that connection, and I am proud to serve in the administration that has done more to support it than any in history. My friends, our foreign policy progress over the past 2.5 years has been truly extraordinary. We have protected American interests in international forums. We have defended American sovereignty at all costs. We have recognized Jerusalem as the capital of Israel and finally moved our embassy after decades of broken promises. We have withdrawn from the disastrous Iran nuclear deal. We have rejected the failed policies of the past. We have renewed American leadership. We have renewed our partnership with Israel. Thanks to President Trump's bold new approach, all of this was achieved in only 30 months. Imagine what we will accomplish in a second term. It was an honor to speak with you today. Thank you very much.